As we are celebrating the feast of Saint John of the Cross, and as in 2026 we celebrate the first centenary of the declaration of John of the Cross as the doctor of the church, it is relevant to skim over the spiritual doctrine of John of the Cross about the union of soul with God. According to John of the Cross, the sole aim of human being is to be united with God. In the original creation, when God created man in his own image and likeness, man had this union with God, and due to sin, he lost it. Now, when John speaks about the union of God, union of soul with God, he speaks explicitly of the supernatural union of soul with God. He is aware of the essential and natural union of soul with God. That is to say, God, by giving the existential presence, is present in the soul. And therefore, there is a union of soul with God in the natural realm. That is to say, every created things, everything that exists in God, and God gives them existence, and thus God is present in them. But John is not speaking about this union, but he is speaking about the supernatural union. That is a union of the soul with all its faculties with God, a union of two persons in love. So, in order to understand this union, we have to understand first the concept of soul according to John of the Cross. Following the scholastic view of the concept of man, that is a composite unity of body and soul, John of the Cross divides the soul into two parts, the sensory part and the spiritual part. In the sensory part of the soul, there are the sensory faculties, exterior faculties, sense faculties of seeing, hearing, smelling, taste and touch. And in this sensory part, there is also an interior part that is reduced to fantasy and imagination. And the spiritual part comprised of three things: intellect, memory and will. And according to John of the Cross, every human being at the time of baptism is endowed with the gift of the Holy Spirit, faith, hope and charity. And through this faith, hope and charity, the substance of the soul can be united with God, especially the spiritual part of the soul. But for that, we have to begin the spiritual journey. And in this journey, the initial power is given by God Himself. That is to say, God gives the soul the desire to reach God and be united with God. That is why St. John of the Cross writes in Spiritual Canticle, fired with love's urgent longing. So this longing of the soul leads him to take the journey, the spiritual journey of night. It is a uniqueness of John of the Cross that through the imagery of a night, he makes it clear how this union is taking place between soul and God. Of course, he is following the scholastic method of purgative, illuminative and unitive way. But he is bringing the image of night. Night has got three parts. The night begins at the twilight. So there is a mixture of light and darkness in the beginning. And there's a part of the dark night when everything is completely dark and there is no ray of light at all. And the third part, that this night is getting over and rays of light is coming and it reaches the full day light. And John of the Cross says, the beginners who starts the journey with love's longing to reach God begins the night. And what is this night? He says this night is the night of the senses. Here we have to see the distinctive fact of active night, which is initiated by the soul itself. And after that, God purifies the senses, where there is no effort of the soul. That is called the passive night of the senses. So this is the first part of the night. That is for the beginners. So when a human soul is not feeding his exterior senses, he darkens the soul, and that is a night for the soul. And by not feeding, in other words, by mortifying the exterior senses, man participates in the active night of the senses, sensory part of the soul. And that is necessary in order to curb these senses, because these sensory things are actually a block for the soul to be united with God. Once this is darkened and put into still through human effort, that is not enough. God has to passively purify it, still purge away what is remaining and completely quieten it, still it. Then starts the next night, the dark night of the soul. That is the passive night, in which God purifies the spiritual part of a human being. And the spiritual part consisted of intellect, memory, and will. So we have to keep in mind the exterior senses and the spiritual soul, the faculties of intellect and memory are cognitive. They have apprehension. They have perceiving the ideas from the exterior things. But the will is the appetitive part. Will is always inclined to do good, to search for the supreme good. Therefore, ultimately the union of persons are union of will. So St. John of the Cross says, man, when he does not feed the senses, already puts the sensory part of the soul into quietude and then enters, if God willing, into the passive night. And here, God does purge away every inordinate attachment, every slavery to the things of the world from the heart of the soul. Man is completely purged of all his attachments, all his inordinate attachments to the world. Because what is not of God falls short of God. So John of the Cross envisages a total, integral, complete union of the substance of the soul with God. For that, every other thing must be denied. That is why John of the Cross becomes the prophet of Nada. In order to possess the all, todo, we have to desire the possession of nothing, nada. So on our spiritual journey, there are spiritual goods coming in. There are other goods coming in. We have to say, not this, not that, and follow the naked path of the soul to God. That is not getting attached to. And now coming to the point of the purgation of the spiritual faculties of the soul, intellect, memory, and will. Here comes what I said in the beginning, the three theological virtues. In fact, intellect is purified through faith. Faith purifies the intellect. According to John of the Cross, faith and reason are not separate. When the reason is subjugated to faith, man attains his full freedom. So faith is the only light, but that light is dark for the soul. So under the light of this faith, the soul undergoes, or the proficiency undergoes, the passive night of the soul. And then the memory. Memory is purified by the theological virtue of hope. In hope, the soul has only one aim: to attain to God, to reach God, to be united with Him. All other earthly affections, earthly things are curved. Nothing appears there. It's totally detached from that one. So, hope purifies the memory, detaches the memory of every earthly affections, and make it completely, solely reserved for God and union with God. And then finally comes the will, the appetitive part of the soul. Then will is purified through love. The soul loves God not for the sake of soul, but for the sake of God Himself. Only God-oriented thing is there. All selfish love disappears. God purifies the soul from all selfish love, self-centered love. We know that psychologically, man is moved by the kinetic energy of self-centeredness, self-gratification. So, in this state, man is purified of all these things. And there is only love, love for God. And this love for God also given by the special gift of the Holy Spirit. With the love of God, the soul loves God. And that is the stage of the perfect. So once purified through the passive night or the spiritual part of the soul, soul is ready to be united with God. Then the union takes place progressively, gradually. The final one is the spiritual state of marriage, spiritual marriage, in which the union is complete and is perfect. This is only less than the beatific vision. And this is the zenith of union a human person can attain to. And in this union, what happens? The soul, which is completely purified of all defilements, is transformed into God Himself. That is to say, the qualities of God are imparted to the soul, and soul is divinized. Then only soul can be united with God. Perfect contemplation, perfect presence of God, in which a soul is completely transformed into God, imbued by the power of the Holy Spirit. A total transformation into the likeness of God. And this transformation is a transformation of love. This union is a union of the will in love, where the soul and God are united, become one. Of course, the soul retains its individuality, but it is perfected, it is becoming like God, and all likeness of God is given to it. That is the union of the soul with God according to John of the Cross. And this last stage he calls is a stage of the perfect. And according to him, every human being is called to be united with God. Once the works of John of the Cross was reserved only for the spiritual theologians, but now he is widely read by others, because every human being have the greatest desire to be united with God. So let us try to purify ourselves, especially in this world of digital world. Man has to purify himself. Through all exterior senses, man is overloaded with the world and things of the world, which are not God. And therefore, he can never find serenity, peace within himself. And he is deprived of faith, hope, and charity. Therefore, let us go to God. Wish you a very happy feast of St. John of the Cross. Thank you.